Hey everyone, today we're working on a 2014 Subaru Forrester. This is the 2.5 naturally aspirated. Today we're going to be doing rear brake pads and rotors, and we'll also be doing a wheel bearing. It's pretty simple. First you're going to want to take the car, jack it up, put it on jack stands. Alright, then we're going to take the 19mm lug nuts off, get those off, and now we have the wheel here off, and you're going to take two 14mm, everything's 14 mil on here, two 14mm bolts, and what I do is I pull right here and it comes off real easily. This can easily be pushed in with some channel locks. As you can see, it goes in there just like that. So then this is ready to be reinstalled, so we can set this up here. So now we have two more 14 mil bolts that are going to be holding on the caliper bracket, and we're going to remove those really quick. As you can see, they're back here, a little bit rusty, but pretty easily accessible. Alright, so get them off, remove it. We will be taking a wire brush to the shims, and we'll clean that out before reinstalling it. We'll also take these out and re-lube them on the inside. Even if there's lube in it, you still want to re-lube it. Okay? So now we have to remove the rotor, and it's a pretty intricate process. And then the rotor will come off. Boom, just like that. Set that aside. We'll put the new ones on there anyways. So now the next step is going to be removing this axle nut, which is, what size is this? This is a 1 1/4 inch. You can see that. No, it doesn't matter, but it's 1 1/4 inches. Boom, just like that. I'm sure it's like a 30-something millimeter metric. Boom, just like that. It comes off. This should go in pretty easily. You don't really want to bang on it too hard. You don't want to bang on this too hard because you don't want to mess it up for the axle nut. We're just going to try to get it a little bit loose, and then we are going to get back here, and there's four 14mm bolts that got to come out, and then we can try to remove this. Once you get those 4 bolts off of the rear, they're 14mm. I used an extension on my impact and got them off, but you can use just a regular ratchet to get them off. It's pretty easy. So now this whole thing is going to come off as a unit, because it kind of gets stuck together. So you're going to want to get either a slide hammer or be very careful and tap on this around here to get it off without damaging the inner brake. So you don't want to hit that stuff. See, I hit this right here, but it didn't fuck it up too bad, but you got to be careful not to do that. Alright. So this one doesn't really want to budge. I'm going to have to work on it a little bit more. Maybe throw some lube back behind here to get it off. But work at it a little bit, you'll get it off. Alright, so still couldn't get it off. I had to take the brakes off. And now I am going to torch around there to try to get this loose. Because as you can see, I beat the fucking shit out of it trying to get it loose, and it's not fucking coming. So I'm gonna have to get it torched. So I took these off. I took the brakes off. I had to bang on it a lot. What I ended up doing is after taking the brakes off, I had to hit it with this sledgehammer on the sides, back and forth, until I finally can get it off. It was a little hot. And this whole thing comes off. See? It comes off. It's stuck on there. Which I'll have to remove that, separate it. And this got a little messed up, but I'm just going to grind this down so that I can get the nut back on. And now we're going to separate this. Just going to have to bang on a little bit, get that out of there without messing this up too bad. After much banging, I got it separated. Now, before you reinstall all this, you're going to want to clean this area right here and then put some anti-seize in there. That way this fucking stupid shit doesn't happen again. This is a brand new bearing, or I mean, this is a 2014. And it took me an hour and a half to get that off. So make sure you put some anti-seize on that before you reinstall your bearing. I'll show you guys a little trick. So I smacked this with the hammer, right? And once you smack it with a hammer, it can push the threads together and it won't want to thread on, okay? The nut won't. And then instead of being like, damn, I need a new axle, what you can do is, I'll show you, take your grinder, okay? And grind off just the wide parts. So any spot that's bigger than the normal threads, like run your finger across it. Let's get this to focus in there. Run your finger across it, and if it doesn't protrude above, then you should be good. Take your nut, and if it goes on, it should go on smoothly. Boom, just like that. See, now it's no big deal because we got the nut on. Instead of going, shit, it's fucked, it's really not. If you just grind it, see how I grinded it like in a condylar shape. So I come down like this. Ying, 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 ying. And then as long as nothing's wider, this will go on. So you're good, okay? Just remember that for all your other jobs too, because it can save you a lot of hassle and heartache if you know you can just fix it. Sometimes you can't, sometimes it's too fucked up, but most of the time, as long as there's some threads on there, you can get it to go back on. You don't want to try to put it on beforehand and mess up the threads on the nut, because then you're screwed once this is messed up. So don't mess this up. Just grind this down and it'll eventually go on just like that. Oop. Just like that, as you can see. Nice. Alright, so now I'm going to clean this out. I'm going to, I ground this out a little bit. So now I'm going to put some anti-seize in here and in here and start putting it back together. I've got a little bit too much on there. Don't want to have a bunch. Put it on the shaft. If you want, put it on these threads. Really anywhere that you don't want rust to make it stick. And this is just a preventative maintenance. You don't really, or a preventative measure. You don't have to do it, but it's going to help you a lot in the long run. So while you're putting this on, you're going to put this back piece onto the bearing, and then the bearing, you're going to set it in there, right? So when you're doing that, you're going to have to make sure that it's lined up in the nuts back there, right? Or with the bolts. So it's kind of hard to line up. Once you get it in position, you can look through these holes and see where you need to go, and then take a chisel or anything and hit it, and you can clock it, and you can turn it to where you can get it just right. So that's a good way to adjust it, because sometimes it's too tight to adjust by hand. And then once you get it in just the right spot, your bolts, they'll thread right in. Alright, since I had to take these brakes off, I'm going to show you guys how to put them on. So the e-brake is connected right here, and then you'll take this and put it on there, and then so you're going to throw this up on there, right? And then this little thing that comes through here, in through the back, well, you can't see it very well, but this pin right here goes in the back, and then it holds this brake pad on. Then you take this thing, see how it's got a slit in it. You're going to put it up here, then you're going to get your needle nose, and you're going to put the part through the piece, and once you push through, you twist it, and then it holds it in like that, okay? So we're going to do that to this piece up here to hold that first brake pad in. So you got that part in. You can see that part, that clip, and then you twist and it sticks in there. And then you take this spring, which is going to stay attached to there, you take this spring and attach it right to this hook, and then you do the same thing with the other side. You put it on this piece first, then you take this spring, put it up here, and then down on the bottom is going to be a little bit tricky, but you take this and you set it right in here. There's a little area for it, and then this is going to have to come closed. Now you can see that this is the adjuster. This is the brake adjuster. So then there's a spring that goes right here, from here, there to there, and that's going to hold that together. And then the rear drum will be mostly together. If you ever have any problems, take apart the other side so that you can see what it all looks like together. It really does help you in figuring out where stuff goes. So it doesn't go into the holes, it goes into these little hooks right there. So make sure you get them in the hooks, and then that'll hold that together, and then that will keep your adjuster in place, and you can set the drum on, it's a drum and rotor, on the vehicle. Always remember to wash your rotors with brake clean before installing them. They come with oil covered on them to keep them from rusting, so you got to make sure you do that, unless it can mess up the pads. Alright, getting the rotor on after I cleaned it. There it is, nice and good, nice and tight. Now we're going to install the caliper bracket that we cleaned up, and we're going to install the caliper and the brake pads. I like to get everything lubed and get the brake pads inside the caliper bracket, and then install it on the vehicle. So this is the old rotor. It has a rubber grommet in there so that you can get in and adjust the brakes. We're going to replace that. right in here. I did adjust the brakes before I put it together so that they are nice and snug in there. I lubed the caliper slides, 14 mils. I lubed up the shims in between the pad and the caliper bracket. And then I also put anti-seize all around the inside of the bearing to make sure that if this ever has to come off, it doesn't give you any major issues, or me any issues. So now we're going to put the wheel back on and yeah, get her torqued down. So I'll show you guys a little trick in case you haven't seen any of my other videos. Sometimes it's hard to lift a wheel just a few inches off the ground. It's hard on your back. But if you take your knees and you use your knees, hold up, I'm going to move this back so you can see what's actually going on. Use your knees as the fulcrum and you can lift the wheel and set it on just like that. It makes your life a lot easier when putting, especially if they're bigger wheels and tires. You know, you get some 20 inches on a, or 24s or 26s on an Escalade or something, and you got to put a wheel on. It's hard to use your back, but if you use the technique that I just showed you, it'll make your life a lot easier and your back a lot easier. Your back a lot easier. You know what I mean? But then you get this torqued on there. Alright, you guys, we finished the rear brakes, rear wheel bearings on this 2014 Forester. It was a little bit of a pain. Make sure you get your sledgehammer and maybe a torch to get this done. Southern cars and stuff like that, because this is in Michigan, so a lot of the times the cars are way more rusty. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm going to get this cleaned up and give it back to the customer. And you guys take her easy, and if she's easy, take her twice. Later.